The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts, ownership, or management. And now, on with the show. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're on episode number 3 with Steve, James, and Janie, and we're continuing talking about showbiz here at the Westgate Resort, Las Vegas, and the International Showroom, and Elvis Presley's dressing room. And as Steve pointed out a little while ago, it was everybody's basically. Yeah, but it was built for Elvis. So, and if you can get kind of technical, Barbara was down here first. Barbara Streisand. She was actually the first one to be down here, and then it moved on to Elvis. And then the legend just keeps on going from there on out. So anyway, Steve, I'd like to have a little talk about, you were here for quite a while, 4 years or so, you say. And then my question would be, did you go directly into just full-time electroacoustics, or did you also work other rooms, head sound other places? Or, what was your progression of being basically full-time with electroacoustics?
Well, it's again, one of the things that the time that I was here, I saw that they were moving more towards productions rather than star policy. Star policy was eating them alive. At least that's what Dick said, and it got to be very expensive. So there was a decision made to put in a production show, which was a lot of dancers, topless dancers and whatever, and lots of, they built like a mountain set with an Aztec temple on the top of it. And on cue, there was a waterfall that came down. And it was big. And there was people dancing all over while this is happening. This is past me. I mean, I didn't bother hanging around for that, but I saw it. And it all ended up down here. And there were big tanks that would store it, and then there were pumps that would pull it back up. So if Mickey Giebler was around, he could probably tell you, but he's passed. Most of the crew from that.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I knew stuff like that was going to happen, and I just realized the production. I didn't want to do that. That's when things get old, is when they get to be the same thing. I mean,
you'd already done Razzle Dazzles, and you knew what that was.
Yeah, and it was only 2 nights a week, if I remember correctly.
And you were already tired of doing it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, and I think the best thing, I came home one night and I told Janie, I said, I don't remember the cues I just did. And she looked at me and I went, yeah. I said, some of that stuff becomes just rote memory.
Yeah.
Because it's the same. The only thing changed was the comedian that they'd hire periodically. Everything else, all the skating and everything, it was all the same. Same thing with whatever, I forget the name, it doesn't really matter, the production show that was here. And eventually it didn't do well, and they brought Suzanne Summers in.
Yeah, and Moulin Rouge.
Yeah, and they built her into it, and that's when it took off a little bit. But I was long since gone. Like I said, I saw that coming, and I just realized, I said it was time to go. So I ended up really working about a year or so in the convention area.
Of this hotel?
Of this hotel.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, since we'd already kind of started my audio business here with a couple of hot spots and everything, we just looked at each other and went, okay, we were going to go for it. So that's when we started the audio business. And again, what I would do is, while I was working at the convention center on Saturday morning, stuff like that, I'd go over to Loopy's house, and he had a big table saw, and Sid Josephs would come over, and we'd build cabinets. That's how we built our first sound system. So bless their hearts, they helped me a lot doing that. And I would always say, well, how's the hotel? And Sid would say, you don't want to know. And I went, okay, that's why I'm not there anymore. So we didn't last very long. We got into the rental business, and it took off from there. It was, I think, mostly my reputation from working in my uncle's shop for a while, because we knew a lot of people. Excuse me. And her hard work and keeping us afloat. And because it's like I said, we'd sit, the nice part about it is we went home and talked about it, which is probably the worst thing because our kids would look at us and go, really? But we'd talk about when there was enough money to buy more gear, to do more shows and all that. And that was the name of the tune. And again, like I said,
The kids would say stuff like, going to Disneyland would be really cool instead of buying another amplifier.
yeah, well, and look where the kids are now.
Yeah. Your daughter does sound too, right? She's down at Smith? Or?
She's at Smith Center. She works on stage. She doesn't mix. She doesn't want to. But my son has actually taken over what I used to do. He does corporate. Okay. Every once in a while, he'll do a band that's built into a corporate show, but where's he now? Denver. Yeah, he's in Denver. He flew out a few days ago, and it's one of the few times he's actually the assistant. And he said, Dad, this is really kind of cool because he gets paid the same amount of money, does the same thing, but he doesn't have to engineer. And corporate's different in a way because you're dealing with different people all the time.
Yeah.
But they have. I tell you, I'm so proud of them. At any rate, they go, oh, Dad, come on.
Well, she's down. Your daughter's down there. Is John Rote still down there as head audio guy, or?
Yeah, yeah, and so's John Trace is still there. Oh, he left finally, because he was sick, I think, and but it's she's into Broadway, and that's a lot. But they do a lot of local stuff too, like that.
It's a great place to work.
Well, and it's a nice place to be a card holder too. When you do road shows, if you know what I mean, because they keep their card holders doing all the work.
Yep.
At any rate, yeah, I personally don't like to talk about the local a lot. It did okay for us, but I'm out of that kind of scenario per se.
I've been out of that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not my thing down there.
Yeah, well.
And I wasn't their thing either, so.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's a mutually exclusive relationship.
Well, and that's true, and because when we finally got out of the business, I ended up being training manager for a while, and the new facility that's out there, we helped. Actually, Janie and I were the ones that found it, and brought all of the training people in. Doesn't matter.
It's a nice place out there.
It is.
It is a very nice place.
Yeah, and they got a pretty good deal on it, and it does everything. And Leon has done very well with it. We did very well with what we had at the time. But what was the only story I'll really tell you is that the only issue we really had, and only happened once. We had a guy come in. He'd been in the union for a long time. One of these family kind of things. And he walked in, and he walked right through everything, walked into the back, and he was standing there looking around. And I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "No, I'm just looking to see where my money's going." And I went, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I pay for this." I said, "No, you don't."
Nope.
Yeah. So, and that was the biggest problem with the union per se, is they didn't help defining that.
Yeah.
And it's like I got to the point where when people would come in, I said, "Do me a favor, bring me your check stub and show me where it says training on it."
Yeah.
That was the end of it.
Yeah, the employer pays into that, but you don't pay a dime into it, guys.
Right, right. And they pay pretty good money, too.
Yeah, they pay. It's a big chunk of change goes into that training trust. So.
Well, and I think the issue is a lot of times it's... we don't need to go there. I mean, a lot of times it's what are you training per se.
Yeah.
And people, a lot of people in this business, whether they're in a union or not, are all about instant gratification. Oh, well, I'll take this class and I can make hundreds of dollars a day or whatever. It's not the truth, because you know how it is. I mean, half the business at Local 720 was on letter of request. That's what I worked with.
Yeah.
I usually tell people, in the years that I was with Local 720, I never signed in, at all. People knew me for the job that I didn't request me. That was probably the best thing about letters of request. You know, so we had a lot of companies that worked with us, and you know, I was part of the package, so to speak. So
Well, when you brought the classes in here, you know, my typical speech was, "Hey guys, I'd introduce everybody on our crew here. We had a good sized crew.
Mhm.
And I said, I just want to go over a couple of things real quick. And one of them is, after you graduate this class, after you are able to sign in and you're able to start working full time out of that, if you think this year is the year you're going to make 100,000, you're wrong. A lot of you are still going to be working at whatever job you're doing, 7-Eleven, whatever, and picking up a job here and there, nighttime, whatever, whenever you can. I said, and number 2, all shows close. Some last one night. Some can last 35, 40 years. But all shows close. So don't get your heart set on this show lasting forever. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, this it's all kind of for the longest time. It was all family related most of the time. I didn't have any family that was in other than my uncle, and he didn't do shows. He did films, you know, in theaters. But that's the biggest problem, is that most shows during the time, there was a regular crew that always got the work, and then everybody else was the fill-in kind of stuff. So we tried to, when I was in training, we tried to do the best job getting everybody at least up to that speed. But the thing is, training couldn't promise them anything. And they always say, well, can I go out to work? And I said, it didn't depend on us. You know, we're here to support Local 720.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And we did, I think, you know, Janie and I did a very good job on that, don't you think? Yeah.
I think you guys did a great job. You know, and that facility you guys found out there and put together, man, that's a nice place out there. I went out and saw Leon about a year ago and looked around. I was like, wow.
Is that the first time you've been out there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that was. I was getting ready to wind up my into my retirement, so I went out and just talked to him, got some lowdown on some things. You know, I didn't know Leon very well, but his wife, you know, Maria, I knew her pretty well. I knew her dad, you know, Curly, from way back when. So, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody kind of finds their niche a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like the only reason we were there was who were the other two? I'm sitting there looking at his face when he was injured in a motorcycle accident. Oh, Dennis Brook.
Dennis Brook, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
Dennis, yeah.
Dennis actually worked with us at Nevada Audiovisual for a while. He made deliveries.
Okay.
Then the next thing I know, he's, you know, got into the Union Hall, and well, let's put it this way: you can make a lot more money working at a Local 720 than you can making deliveries.
Yeah.
But he was always a great guy.
Yeah, Dennis was awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so let's pick this up.
Yeah, so we got, so you got out of this place, you started doing your business full time.
Well, I do have a couple more entertainers.
Oh, let's talk about them. Let's talk about some entertainers.
Well, they're all pretty straight ahead. I mean, you know, the nice part about my relationship here with entertainers, I never had a problem with them. I mean, they all had issues, but it was never audio issues per se. And you know, show business can be an interesting business per se on what can happen, and if it can go wrong, it can. But there were some people I work with that are actually pretty good. There was when Lou Rawls came in with Gladys Knight. Gladys opened for him, and she was actually pretty good. The only issue we had right at the front wasn't with me per se, is with she evidently appeared here before I got here, and they wanted to take a couple of the pipes, lash them together, and put a swing on it. So when the band started playing, she would actually come out of the grid. And the guys were kind of going back and forth with that, and Loopy came up, and so was Dick Lane, and he said, "Guys, we've done this before." So they got it done, taken care of, and her road manager sat with me as well, and we got to Midnight Train to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
He and I both did that. I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional on that, but he and I both did that at the same time. And he would sit behind me during the whole show, during her show, you know. And we would converse every once in a while, but when we got to that, we were both like this, and people would turn around and say, "What the hell are they doing?" We're having fun. It was a
it's
great show.
choreography.
Yeah, she was just a sweetheart in general. I met her maybe twice on stage. It was like, she said, "What do you need from me?" I said, "Absolutely nothing. Everything that you're doing is fine. What can I do for you?" And she said, "You're doing fine too." I said, "Then let's do shows."
Yeah.
She opened for Lou Rawls, and I got to know their lead engineer. It was a girl. One of the few times, Cece Cope was her name, and she was always pretty straight ahead. The only interesting thing that was with her is when she came in, she would take Lou had specific microphones that he wanted to use, and they were Beyer M88s. Well, the Beyers are like a ribbon microphone. They're very sensitive. The only thing that it made him sound real good. The problem was, and I found this out the very first time, and then when the next time they came in, and then I think they were in about 3 times, I knew exactly what we were going to need. So what I ended up doing is she says, "I need to warm these things up because they get moisture in them, and the ribbons don't sound good. So they have to be dried out." Well, where's the driest place here? Loading dock.
Yeah, outside.
Outside on the loading dock. So the first time I just brought a couple mic stands up and we set them up and let them dry out, and they were fine. She would listen to them. She had a set of ears that were really, I mean, I thought
really
I could
good
hear.
ears, huh?
Oh, yeah. And that's what it takes sometimes for the nuance stuff. You watch somebody engineering at a console and they're doing slight changes. If you've been there, you can hear the subtle changes. Most people, well, what'd you do? Well, it's the subtle things that make a difference.
Yep.
So at any rate, that whole thing was actually, it was just more about that. Yeah, and the thing is she had to do that every single time because he had a raspy voice to it. And he'd always finish with his primary song, You'll Never Find.
Yeah.
But the thing was, he could be, I mean, his other stuff was kind of like generalized jazz. It wasn't anything really to write home about. It was a lot of his tunes, but it's like, okay. So when I finished with Gladys, I would just get up and she would be standing there. She'd sit in my place, pull her chair forward, and I'd go backstage and hang out. Well, I think it was a couple times into it, the intercom system we had a light on it that only came from audio because it was 2 channels. And I'm sitting there and I picked it up and I went, "Yes," and she said, "I'm lonely." So I went, okay. So I went back out there and sat with her for a while. But she was a sweetheart too, and she could mix like nobody's business. She really did some good stuff. The only other thing that kind of bothered me a little bit is that she had fingernails that were about 1 inch long that she took very good care of. Well, on the console, I'd sit and watch her.
You do it.
Yeah. Well, she had learned to I said, "Why don't you trim those things down?" And she looked and "But they look so good." I went, "Okay." But she'd just take her fingers and grab the knobs and turn them. So she got her fingernails out of the way. That was the only way. And
Weird. That's
yeah.
bizarre, yeah.
Well, it's some of that stuff that you could probably, if you sit on a console nowadays, they're much more open and stuff like that. The Ward Beck we had, excuse me, was it was basically a recording console, broadcast, and we had 2 of them, one in the Flamingo and one here, and I'll do a quick story about that because I'm kind of finished with Lou. But like I said, one thing I will mention is that when Lou was there, Janie was pregnant. with Aaron. And she came in one time when Andy Williams was there, and he was standing behind me at the console, and he looked at her, and I introduced her, and what did he say? When do you do? And she said, any day now. And he literally backed away about 6 steps, So, actually, Aaron was born on a Liberace show change, I'll go to in a minute. But it was just really funny that all that stuff happened. And Cece called afterwards, and they had finished their run at the Hilton, and they went to the Aladdin. And she called and she said, we have something for your son. I went, oh, okay. So we went to the Aladdin. How much did they give him? $100 bill. The thing was that Janie was holding him, and Cece came in, and next thing you know, Lou walks up, and he goes, hey. Scared the shit out of him. Aaron's eyes like glasses, and it was just one of those funny situations. But he was good people. Him and all of them that we worked with were fine. So where was I? Oh, that was the Lou Rawls thing. And other than that, that was, again, the biggest thing with them was that her fingernails and the fact that they used the M88s. But I can understand why they did, because it made him sound so good. And one of the reasons where I kind of went backstage is I wasn't into that kind of music until he would do Lady Love.
Yeah.
And then the last one was You'll Never Find, which is his closing number. And that was my cue to go back out front so I could shut down.
Yeah. Get out of there for the night.
But it was yeah, that's when everybody started snapping their fingers on those last 2 numbers. So, again, all of the performers that I work with, I never had any problems with. I mean, some of them had certain things that they'd want, but there wasn't any big deal out of anybody. It was really more of, yeah, can you do this here? And as long as it wasn't, out of my direct, I would, if it was a staging cue, I'd usually send them to Mickey or whoever to deal with all that stuff. So, at any rate, well, that was it for them.
You were going to talk a little bit about Liberace.
Oh, actually, yeah. Lee is when pretty much everything happened. He played the hotel for so long, so many weeks at a time. I mean, I guess he kind of became the Elvis because he was there so much. Well, and he lived here in town.
Yeah.
Lee had a party at his house at least once or twice for the stagehands, But, the key with Lee was that he was a consummate entertainer. There wasn't much that threw him off. Once in a while it did, and it was like it was how he rebounded a lot of times, which makes him who he was. Yeah. But again, I was always on a first name basis with him, and Ray Arnett, who was his manager, and just to kind of get Ray out of the way a little bit we were setting up to do rehearsal, and next thing I know, the rehearsal was over. And I went, wait a minute, I haven't even had a chance to set the band yet. They went through a couple numbers, and I'm good, so I went up to I went on stage, and I walked up to Ray, and can I curse on the radio? Yeah.
Whatever you want to do here.
Well, okay, I'll just say the first letter. How's that? Okay. But at any rate, I walked up to him and I said, I need more time. I didn't have enough time to engine the show. And he looked at me and he said, Did you hear Lee's mic? Yeah, because he talked into it. Did you hear Lee's piano? Yeah. Screw everything else. But it was a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
And it's like I looked at it and I went, okay, I understand that.
Okay.
So the first number was actually my band mix.
Yeah.
But I was, kind of knew everything. The Warbeck was real careful. Not careful. What's the word I'm looking? Consistent on what it did. And it was, like I said, I can't overemphasize how good that thing sounded. It got me out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
All right, the rest of the stuff is pretty straight ahead.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah.
When you did the lounge, let me just jump back. When you did the lounge here,
Yeah.
what did they have any kind of production? Because some lounges do production shows, some do live bands. What was it here at that time?
Most of the time, we had a disco girl that did music,
Okay.
and she did discs. It was actually, and she was good. She played in between the band numbers. They were local bands, but nobody of significance. Some of them were good, and they were there primarily for dance. It's not so much dancing as it was just the entertainment, the vocals, and because they all had their own thing. When people want to dance, that's when the DJ did their thing. But that's pretty much what it was.
Okay.
Till late in the like 2 o'clock.
Oh, to me that's not very late. We were down. I ran the Merriment Lounge at the Mint for 3 years downtown, and yeah, that was 8 at night till 5 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was a blast. That's when you learned that every, you do a 45-minute set, run back, unplug, plug in the next band real quick, run out there, curtain go up, do it for another 45 minutes. So the first number was sound check on everybody.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's kind of the way it was with that show with Lee.
Yeah, that's what made me think about that. I was like, oh, how many times I did that down at the Mint.
Yeah. Well, and it's it was a good run for this building that we did. I learned an awful lot, and we did pretty good money-wise, I think, when we were here. As a matter of fact, Nathan would always say, "Well, Steve, you're high man again." Yeah, I was doing well, and sometimes he would do it, but and it was something that had been installed by people prior to me, and Dick Lane and Terry Little just kept it. But at the end of each show, I'd hit the cart, and it would be an advertisement for different things in the hotel. Well, somebody got the wild idea to say, well, we should be paid for that. And I don't even remember, it wasn't that much, but that's what they did. So every show, after each show, that when you hit the button, it was a paid advertisement, is what it was. So other than that, most of the time, once I got past Stephen Eady, I was 7 days a week at this hotel. Most of the time.
Yeah.
Unless if they had their own engineer like Cece or something like that, I would always take at least the 1 day off or whatever. But anyway, back to Lee, it's like, yeah, he was the consummate piano player and artist. There was nothing that really bothered him. I mean, there were some things that happened that are, it's like one of the ones that happened after the intro, he came out. He'd always come out in one of the cars, and he'd have his driver with him. And one of the cars that he had was a boat-tailed Speedster. It only had 2 seats in it in the front. And he pulled, after the overture, he pulled up, and he was always standing up in the car. And again, I won't mention his name, but the driver got out and he slammed the door, and the transmission was a little touchy. And what it did was that it was in neutral, and when he slammed the door, it dropped into reverse, and the car backed off stage with Lee in it.
Jeez.
And all he said was the guy's name. Where are we going? Where are we going? And the car evidently hit Bertha. The big winch. Is it still there? We had a huge, like a 10-ton hoist that was stage right. they'd use it to bring set pieces in and to preload the fly rail.
Yeah, no, it's not there
It's
anymore.
not there? Okay.
No.
Well, it got hit a few times during some of the shows, but that's what happened. The Boattail Speedster hit it. And there was some commotion there for a while, and Scott really didn't know what to do, but he was kind of standing there. I think he went off stage to see how, and Lee was okay, because he came back on stage and he picked his mic up and he said, "Hell of a ride." And he just moved right along. So
Yep.
nothing really bothered him a whole lot. There was one instance on his big mirrored piano where he broke a string right at the top while he's playing. And everybody kind of stopped for a second. And he leaned over and he said, "But I need that one." And he just picked it up and put it out of the way. And I'm sitting there listening to him, and I couldn't tell that one was broken. So whatever he did, he totally worked around it.
Wow.
And the last one we'll kind of go into is where
Everyone talks about Lee being, Liberace being such a nice person. Nathan, obviously.
well, Nathan worked with him firsthand.
Yeah. And everybody that's ever worked with him said, what a nice, just a nice professional,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like him saying, asking me if, about my son, because, they were concerned.
Yeah.
What'd you have, Steve?
And I heard a little bit about those parties for stagehands at Liberace's house. I think it was Nathan who told me a lot about those.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was nice for me because we didn't have to worry about it. I went home.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal.
See, that'd be in the same boat because I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff. So to me, it'd be like, oh, hi, I just saw you at work. It's good to see you here, too. Why am I here?
Yeah. Well, there was only one other thing. I may think about something a little bit later, but he had a thing where he would stop and the curtains would close in while they were doing whatever. There was two things. First off, the Dancing Waters. Well, you know who ran the Dancing Waters? Jeff.
Yep, and he'll be here soon.
Yeah, Jeff ran it. And when they start, they take the curtain up and the Dancing Waters start during one of the things. And I had a guy come over behind me, and he's standing outside the booth, and he's kind of leaning over the edge of the booth and watching. Well, after it was over and the Dancing Waters were done, Lee would introduce who was doing it, who was Jeff. But before that happened, the guy leaned over and he said, "He'd be nothing without you." He thought I did the Dancing Waters. And the thing, just about then, he came out, and and I turned around and looked, and I went like this, and the guy looked like somebody shot his dog. But, you get that a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd have people walking, leaving the place, and they'd say, "Well, look, honey, this is where the lighting guy is." And I got to the point I didn't say anything anymore because I didn't want to really say anything.
Yeah.
But
No, I got that all the time, too, front of house running sound. It was, everybody would just walk by and you go, "Oh, did you like the lights? That's good." And you just, whatever.
yeah, the last one I'll probably just mention about him was that, let's see, trying to look through all this stuff. We talked about the Boattail Speedster, and we talked about the broken string, and I thought there was like one. I'll probably think of it a little bit later. But at any rate, he was just he was very, very good to work with. There was never any problems. Everybody else was the problems.
So would you say he was probably close to one of your favorites to work with when he was around?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine him not being just awesome to work with.
Yeah, anything. It's I mean, you couldn't get him to do anything extra. I mean, it's like, and that's why Ray Arnett would always say, just work around it, which is what we did. I mean, we didn't want to bother his schedule, was what he had. But I you know, I already told you about the car and everything. But that's pretty much it. The rest of the time, it was. No, I'm not saying you get bored, but you know how production shows are. After a while, it's like, okay. And I'm sitting there waiting for the last tune he's going to play. You know, and he had different, you know, he had ballet folklorico, he had the what are the